Okay.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Is that working?
Yes.
Are you hearing me? Yeah,
Hang on, she's.
gotcha.
Yeah, I don't have it like right off the top, but I asked Paige to dive in and she said she got it. So I'll have that for you. It's around the third.
You guys have this memorized?
Right around the third, so. Well, and yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and all of them are coming.
What's with the other two?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Jay was trying to get up here through traffic though. He's down-
There's a wreck.
Down south.
I don't know if he's on the coming freeway way. There was a lot
Joe
of,
got stuck on the freeway outside.
did he?
Yeah, he said outside of the airport.
Oh, wow. So, okay, then I don't know what it is because it's a fire truck,
Oh, I saw that.
the Middleton fire truck. I was like, dang, if it was just a little, I would have been right at Stone Lane a little sooner. I could have just gone right after the fire truck.
Because I was waiting on him to get home. He got stuck.
Of course, quite better.
I haven't seen every guy, so.
You know, they're probably on the freeway, because I should be here 20 minutes
Oh,
before
really?
to my initial
That
ride.
bad?
It is what it is.
Right.
Mark, on this, RFP,
Yeah, we don't have to vote on it, any of it
I
tonight.
was just, because we talked briefly about having
Are we-
possibly just a look at two different price points.
We're live.
So. all-
2 minutes
this is
early,
just
are we
a-
okay?
Here's what would be in it,
Okay.
and it's as much for. the
Okay, I'm
delivery
just
as
checking with
to
Cindy.
get a view of it. We'll send it to the attorneys. We still need a soils report before we can do anything.
Okay.
So, I'm gonna.
There's Jay.
Blue, check it.
We're good? All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Do we want to approve the agenda before we go into the budget hearing, or?
Well, the budget hearing is part of the
Okay.
agenda.
Perfect. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we will move into the budget hearing. It is just a hearing, right?
Yeah, well, a hearing and a vote if the board approves.
Okay, perfect. All right. You're up.
So tonight is our annual public budget hearing. We have it posted for Idaho Code 2 times in the Iowa Press Tribune. So with that, I'll begin with presenting the 2024
We're just cleaning it up here.
amended budget.
Can't see anymore.
Seen this movie before. It's a good one. Okay. Here it is.
Thank you.
Okay. This one, please. So the FY 2024 amended budget. When we began the year, we projected our proposed support units would be at 203.5 units. That's what we initially built our budget on. We actually qualified for 204.22. So that means that we actually received a total state funding increase of just over $2.7 million. So our total revenue for FY 24 will be $3,832,740. The breakdown is as follows. Our salaries and benefits came in just over 31 million. Our purchase services, 4.3 million. Our supplies and material, 1.6 million. Capital outlay and equipment, right at 300,000. Our insurance, $185,276. We're projected to transfer out some monies out of our general to cover other funds in the amount of $390,000, which leaves our reserve fund at just over 1.6 million. So our total expenditures to balance the budget is again equal to our revenue, $39,832,740. That will leave a projected fund balance as we move into this next year of about $3.2 million. So now on to FY25 proposed budget, this new school year. So we bring over that carryover balance of $3.2 million. Our total projected local revenue will be $2.2 million. Our salary-based apportionment from the state will equal about $21.5 million. Our state discretionary funds are going to be about $8.8 million, and other state revenue will be $2.7 million, for a total projected state revenue of just over $33 million.
Alicia, it might be worth noting that this is general fund versus like a bond fund.
Correct, this is general fund only, as it says on the side. So our total revenue projected for the general fund will be $38.5 million. So the breakdown is as such. Again, our salaries and benefits will be about $31.6 million. Our purchase services, $3.8 million. Supplies, just over $1 million. Capital outlay and equipment, $25,000. Our insurance, $240,858. We are projecting no transfers to other funds. Our contingency reserve will be just over 1.6 million. So our total expenditures will equal our revenue of $38,526,286. I want to just briefly state here that the decreases you see from FY24 to FY25 are very, very purposeful. We're trying to really watch our resources, So in general fund, the salaries and benefits, these are some of the increases that the district will take in the general fund. Our health insurance plan, will remain the same as last year. So a $750 deductible for an employee and $1,500 for family. The cost, though, increased 7.7% to the premiums. Dental plans remain the same. The increase was 8.6 on the premiums. This will be the second year that Percy has increased the employer Percy for certificated staff. That increased from 12.69 to 13.48%. For our support staff, it increased from 11.18% to actually 11.96. I apologize for that issue there. So the total increased cost for the employee Percy will be $183,395, or a 6.4% increase to the district. Questions on salaries and benefits? Next slide. Purchase services. Purchase services are anything that we pay. It's our utility costs, so power, propane, natural gas, telephone. It's all the software licensing that we use across the district. So it's our Skyward, our financial management piece, our ICE-Corp hosting, web management, copier and printer leases. It's any professional and contract services, such as our legal counseling, our audit services, any other educational services that are mandated by IEPs, or any building system needs, such as plumbing, electrical, and equipment repairs. A total decrease from FY 2024 to FY 2025 of $462,149, or a 10.6% decrease. Again, very purposeful as we walk into this next year. Supplies and materials, anything that's needed to implement a lesson plan in the classroom, anything that's needed to operate our district offices and our school building offices. It's all the parts and supplies to replace and or repair any building equipment and building systems, and custodial supplies. So the cleanings, the disinfectants, all the paper products. The total decrease from FY24 to FY25 is projected to be $427,438, or about a 28.2% decrease over last year. Our capital outlay and equipment, these are classroom furnishings such as desks, chairs, tables, storage, technology equipment such as laptops, computers, projectors, HVAC units, any grounds maintenance equipment. It'll be a total decrease from FY '24 to '25 of $221,250, or an 89.8% decrease. We were very purposeful in this last year, FY '24, to make sure that we had a lot of our equipment updated as we went. So we didn't feel like we had to do it again. So, but we still have needs for computers, right? So we're working on it. Thank you. Insurance, professional liability, and building and property. It's a cost increase of, from FY '24 to '25 of $55,582, or 30%. This, from last year, we had a 25% increase. This year, we're taking another 30% increase. It's the state of where insurance is at right now, as you're probably all aware of it. So, contingency reserve, per our district policy, we were to budget no less than 5% per year of our projected general fund revenue. So,
Can you remind me real quick of the 1.6? How long does that operate the district if something catastrophic
sure.
happens?
It, honestly, it will not even get us through half of a month.
Okay.
The other part of our budget is our other funds. So these are all of our local and state funds, such as special grants, state career CT monies, state technology, safe and drug-free, our bond redemption fund, our plants and facilities. This year we'll have 2 new funds, the school district facilities and school modernization. We're still trying to fill those out. The State Department is still trying to figure it out. So as soon as they got it figured out, I'm sure they'll pass it down to us. Federal funds such as title funds, Title I, Title II, migrant title funds, the IDEA special ed
Does it in the
funds.
background show up differently?
I don't know if I need that. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Sorry, Alicia. You got fancy on that.
I didn't mean to actually. So the IDEA, the special ed funds, the Carl's Perkin, which helps with our CTE program, and of course our child nutrition program. So the FY '24 amended budget, the total across all of these funds, 18.1 million. And for next year, our proposed budget jumps to 20.1 million. So it's just over a $2 million increase, or 11%. Any questions on the funds?
How would you say that compares to, because that's the budget comparing to the revenues coming in those programs? I mean, are we increasing because of the revenue, or are we
Yes.
increasing for other reasons?
We're increasing slightly due to the revenue because we've had a reallocation of title funds, which will continue as the state figures out that. So we'll reallocate those funds probably through October. But so that helps, but also what helps is the projected big hunk of it is that school modernization piece. So.
What do you mean by reallocation of the title funds?
So the State Department of Ed, their fiscal year, our fiscal year is July 1 through June 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Federal programs, their fiscal year is October 1 through September 30th. So if districts don't use their money by September 30th, they do a reallocation. They'll give it to districts who will use it. So they shuffle up the money and they give you a little bit more. Or sometimes they take a little bit. So there's a reallocation in October.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Kind of.
No, but yeah.
No, it does. I just, go on.
In most, if I might jump in,
Sure.
in most cases, Middleton, we are on the receiving end of reallocations, meaning we increase our revenues because we have used all of our federal
That's what I-
dollars.
I was gonna ask, and I
Yeah.
know we're gonna have a title presentation. so-
Yes, and so we anticipate that if there's a reallocation, the reallocation is in the favor of Middleton rather than us not having used it and then having the state take those funds and use them
Okay.
elsewhere.
That's what I was gonna, okay, thank you.
The final slide is our bond redemption fund. So when we project out our bond levy amount, I might gently just add here that we are projecting bond levy amounts without having any great idea of where market values end up, because we don't get market values till the first Friday in September. So with that, I do know how much we're gonna owe next year, about $4.5 million on the principal, and then interest only will be about just over $500,000. So a total payment for 24-25 of just over $5 million. Now, remember the House Bill 292 last year passed, and it's going to, that bill allocates 1.6 million to Middleton, and we understand we're still gonna get that to help offset that. Also, House Bill 251, the new bill, holds us harmless from the bond levy equalization payment, so we'll receive the $589,227 there. So our projected levy amount as of today would be $2.898,797. I want to assure you that as we get further in and we get more information, we fine tune that. So we'll come down.
Well, and another thing, as noted by the asterisk there, that House Bill 521 has potential to provide additional property tax relief in these categories where it has to be used towards the bond first. We reached out to the State Department today, and they still don't have a way to, they have a range they can calculate, but they don't have the full amount. And so as Alicia worked through her budget, she put the budget at the minimum, knowing that it's very likely to be higher than that comes in.
So when you get that new information, would you be able to present that to us so we can kind of
Yes,
see,
we would.
have this and then see what's different?
Yes, and ideally that would happen in the October, because I don't think we'll have it in time for the September board
Right.
meeting.
Which is really kind of difficult for us because at the same time, we have to certify our levy values by the first Friday in September. So we are going to, I'm going to be hounding the State Department of Ed continually, like you need to give us, and they are aware of it already. They know it's not just us, it's every single school district and taxing district within the state of Idaho. So I know they're working on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here's my contact info. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to either give me a call, reach out through email, or come on and stop on by.
Alicia, I wonder if you'd just take a second and comment on, because I'm hearing noise from other districts in our valley that are having budget shortfalls and difficulty in funding. And obviously, we're doing pretty well here. And I wonder, is that more of us controlling our spending, or do we have more revenue because of a better property tax base? Or do you have any opinion on that? I'm just curious.
Well, we were, a couple of things back on one of the slides I had on the amended budget. We actually were able to recapture some funding that we missed from the previous 3 years. So we recaptured that at $1.3 million. The state sent us that. So that helps help us get over to that 3.2 million. Plus also, if you recall, last year, this current fiscal year, I guess, we went from enrollment funding to ADA funding, and there was for lack of a better term, a hold harmless payment that every district received. So that also helped us. So it did help us overcome that. I like to believe that, and I know that we do hold tight, and we try to be the best stewards of these resources that we can be. So.
Well, obviously, you're doing a really good job.
It's not just me, it's everybody daily too, out doing what they're doing.
Well, and if I could add a couple of comments along those lines. Some of the districts that you've seen that are having to do massive holdbacks are doing that because of a failed supplemental levy.
Mhm.
So they had built their budgets around a supplemental levy. When that didn't pass in May, they don't have another opportunity to do that until November. And that by that time, it's too late to get on the tax rolls for this next school year. So those districts are having to make very large cuts to what they're doing in order to meet their needs. Other districts are similar to looking at what we're doing, where we're looking at options to reduce. So as you saw, as Alicia went through several of those categories, you saw reductions of $300,000 to $400,000. We're looking for all of those options, because even though we have that 3.3, we know where the trends are going. And if we don't have a large influx of students, which at this point it's still holding steady, it's not showing a large increase, we feel we're much better off to get ourselves in a position. So there have been positions we have not hired, chosen to hire. We have not let anybody go, but if they were retiring and it was a position that we felt like we could absorb, then we've been doing that this spring, just to make sure that we put ourselves in a position next year that if there are any kind of shortfalls, that we're in a better position next year than we would otherwise be. Because, I mean, economic outlook isn't pretty for public entities in the coming years. And so we wanted to get ourselves a little bit ahead of that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you. All right. With that being said, anybody else have any more discussion? Do we have any signed in
I do not believe
visitors?
we have any signed in visitors for the budget hearings. Do we yet?
Okay,
This is public.
no,
Yeah.
that's good. That being said, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the amended 2023-2024 proposed, but for 2024-2025
And if I could-
budgets, both budgets we're approving,
If I could make a note that'll need to be two separate,
two separate ones. All right.
one for
So
the
let's do
amended.
the amended for 2023-2024 first.
A motion to approve the amended 2023-2024 budget.
Second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Let's do the proposed budget.
I move that we approve the FY 2025 proposed budget.
2024-2025.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much. Do we need to close that or just go on?
Yeah, I mean, you can close it and move on.
We'll close the budget hearing and we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on that? Anybody? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So I do have,
Do you have it? Go ahead.
we have the disposal of the
Surplus property.
surplus property.
Alicia, can you speak to that? Any
Yeah,
questions?
it's okay, because it's in, I just had a quick question. I thought at one point we had kind of just said if it sits below a threshold, just do it. Is that within our purview or, I mean, we've got $150 worth of stuff.
Right. I believe we still have to have it at least within the consent agenda
Okay.
to declare it as surplus so that we can then sell those
So,
items.
okay.
Okay.
But if it's already been mentioned that somebody wants to buy it, it should still be, right?
What do you mean? It should,
Brought to
yes,
the meeting.
yes.
Okay.
No, it was
It's just a formality, right?
There may be a way to, as policy, as a group, to say if it is below a certain threshold, the district you would authorize the superintendent to authorize those kind of things. I don't believe we have that within our policy right now, but I will double check on that. And then if that's something you'd like to pursue, we can create the policy that goes with that.
Seems like it
Yeah.
would make
Please, by
It's
all
kind of
means.
redundant with
Yeah.
certain little things.
Yeah.
Yes,
At least 2 iPads for $75.
Right.
Do we have to have a yay or nay on it?
Right, so we'll bring that to July with an update on what the book policy currently says and how you would like to proceed as a board.
all right. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any signed in visitors? Nope. Very good. We will move on to discussion items. Let's go to discussion item A with Mrs. Hutchison. Step up to the fun podium. Ooh.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Hutchison. I'm the Federal Programs Director. And Dr. B asked me just to give you a presentation of what our federal programs have done this last year and what we're looking at for the future year. So this last year with our Title I funds, the whole purpose is to use it for improving basic programs. We currently have approximately 2,100 students in our schools. For title schools, we've declared them a full Title I school. And with that being said, we were able to use our funds this year to employ 13 paraprofessionals to help with those student needs, whether it be working with them one-on-one or interventions or in group settings, however the schools seem fit for those paras to work.
Could you talk just a little bit about the difference between targeted assistance and the school-wide so that our board understands? Because right now we're looking at these as school-wide.
Yes. So targeted assistance would be the amount of students that we had attending that actually, and there's a formula, it's not just free and reduced lunch, but there's other components that go to it. And I'd love to tell you I totally understood how those components blended. But even when I contacted the state to explain it to me, they weren't quite sure how to explain how it's totally calculated. But with us choosing to do the school-wide, we're able to serve more students using those Title I funds versus if we just picked a select population to address those needs.
And so that's a decision that the board makes, and you can make that each year, but typically once a board makes a shift from one to the other, the most common shift is moving from a targeted assistance to a school-wide assistance, just because it does allow you to utilize those dollars for all of the students within that school rather than just a targeted number.
Can I say?
Please.
I agree with school-wide. I have a hard time with not having a Title I teacher to be, and I probably should talk to you, Cindy, about it, but I know that Lisa and Mark have shared with me, but to me, when you have school-wide, but you choose not to have a Title I teacher to kind of coordinate things for each of these schools, or whether you had one in each school, which would be quite a bit. Isn't that putting a lot on the gen ed teacher that has those Title I students? I mean, who guides the 13 paraprofessionals on each of the students?
Well, and I think that's going to vary between schools, and Cindy and Lisa, you can jump in too. I think that's going to vary between schools depending on how they're running their programs, but typically you're going to have general ed teachers that are going to be guiding some of those. Some of those might be guided by the principal themselves. Some of them might be under the direction of instructional specialists who are helping guide what we call the RTI process. So depending on how the school is made up, those 13 paraprofessionals are always going to be guided by a certificated employee, but it may be a different one depending on the schools. Lisa or Cindy, anything else to add as far as?
I would say it too, it depends on the needs. So like, if a para is pushing into, and thinking back when I had paras push into my classroom, it would depend on the needs I had at that moment in time, how I wanted to utilize them to work with students. It could be that they're actually working with my higher end groups so that I could work with the struggling students and we could rotate that around. So depending on the needs of the teacher, however they're being assigned.
I would also say the shift that we've made since we did have a Title I teacher versus now with the paraprofessionals is those more holistic RTI programs in all schools. And so just that systematic approach to it. We have committees in place that meet regularly, that talk about interventions. We're always looking at different students. And so being able to have that systematic approach to those makes a difference in how we're able to utilize those paraprofessionals, whereas before we didn't have that same systematic approach. So we can train them on interventions as a whole because we're doing the same things and using the same curriculum. And so there's been a lot of work put in place as far as curriculum and systematically things at all the schools that have helped us with that transition as well.
So there is a Title I plan for each student. And like, just for example, at Heights, there's 556 students at that school that are receiving Title I services
Support, yes. So,
support.
I would say what happens is each school, so we have our Title I schools actually create a school-wide improvement plan. And then that helps drive the direction on which way that school specifically wants to use the paraprofessionals that they have at their school.
And the state all agrees with this? Do you have to send in your a Title I report or plan?
We, in fact, we just submitted, it's called the CFSGA, and we submit more of, well, it's submitted in two parts. So the CFSGA is how we're going to use the Title I funds. And sometimes, depending on which title fund it is, they give specific requirements that we have to spend certain portions on. But then at the beginning of the year, each school creates their school-wide improvement plan, the Title I schools, and then they're supposed to review with using the data to see if they meet the targeted, what their goals were for that year based on the data that Paige provides for each school.
Okay, so when you say systematic, you've kind of talked about the RTI group. So that committee is kind of mixed in with your Title I committee?
So yes and no, because with Title I, their school-wide improvement plans, they have to have a committee that's put together to formulate that. That includes parents, staff members, administration, counselor is usually on that. That team comes together, creates that plan. That includes most of the time, their family and community engagement plan as well. So there's other components with Title I outside of just the interventions and the academic supports that we can provide with Title I that we have to meet.
Okay.
So that committee looks at more holistically everything in Title I. And that's where that plan comes together. So we can use Heights as an example. If they're targeted in certain areas, that committee talks about the areas they're targeted. They look specifically at how they can provide interventions for those areas, but then it also goes to support how can we involve parents in this discussion? What are we doing for our staff? Is there professional development? And so that school-wide improvement plan goes into a lot of other areas outside of just the student interventions. Now, the student intervention part of that then is supported by those other teams at the school, PBIS teams for behavior, your RTI teams for academic pieces. You have leadership teams at those schools that then meet, and then grade level teams at those schools meet and look at the data from all students at that school as well. And so as those grade level teams meet, they then identify where do these other students need to be referred to support them, and then that's where we look at our RTI system, our PBIS system.
Okay.
So there's layers to it. It's not just this.
There's a
one
lot of
team.
layers.
There is a lot. And then you have your family and community engagement group as well.
So they help with the school-wide improvement plan? Okay.
And it's listed on their plan with specific people who sat on the committee with the school-wide improvement plan. We have to report who sat on that and helped develop that plan.
So is there any way I can sit in on one of those when they start planning? So I can just kind of see where they're, how the parents are involved and how,
Absolutely.
okay. And they do that at the beginning of the school year?
Yes.
Okay, I'd really like to do that.
Okay.
If that's possible.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
If you can, and Cindy is
I'll
one that you.
And thank you very much. I'm sorry to stop you in the middle like that, but
And next slide, Lisa.
Sorry.
So part of our Title I is also the McKinney-Vento, and this is the fancy definition. Basically, McKinney-Vento is our homeless students, and they're homeless due to economic reasons. That's the key factor there. So we look at, they could be doubled up, more than one family living in a home, but if they've got economic reasons that they've made arrangements, like maybe they're making payments or things like that, why they're doubled up, they don't qualify as McKinney-Vento. But if they're staying because they can't afford someplace of their own, that would be doubled up, or if they're living in a camp trailer, things like that. We actually had this year, 83 of our students in our district were identified as McKinney-Vento students. This one's Title I-C, and it's also known as the migrant program. And so one of the things when we refer to it casually as the migrant program, I just wanted to clarify, it's not what you see in the media as the definition of migrant. If you want to consider how somebody qualifies for a migrant program, if you look at me, I actually grew up as a migrant student. So I would have qualified there. What it is if you have a parent that works in an agricultural field and you've made a move within 3 years for an economic necessity, those are the key factors right there that we look at. And we've actually been able to qualify students on themselves who are the ones that are the workers, and they can help qualify the families. This program, we've actually done a lot of increasing over the last several years, and I was a little nervous this year with our numbers. We had 30 families or not 30 families, 30 students that we were at risk of losing, and we were able to make contact with them before their certification of eligibility expired and to renew those so that they were able to stay in the migrant program. Some of the things that we've done to take and help this right now, there are 19 students who are doing summer school at home. We were able to talk to the state, and I know that sounds a little different compared to what the traditional summer school looks like, but one of the ways we were able to increase funding is by we send home materials to our ones that want to participate at home, but they don't want to come in person. And then I have my liaison calls once a week to check on them, how they're doing, and our state has allowed us to count that as summer school materials, and we usually ask them for pictures of things that they're doing. Right now, we had 49 students who actually signed up for the Migrant Summer School, which is K-5, and then I always, the last several years, I've had 6th through 12th graders that come in and help. They ask me, they're usually at the end of summer school, which we're wrapping up this week, if they can come back and help the following week. So I always know that's successful if they want to come back and help. And so, on average, even though we had 49 that signed up, we've had about 36 that have been coming on a regular basis. So it's been a very successful, and each year we've seen an increase there. And then another thing to celebrate this year is this was our first year adding a graduation specialist at the high school level. And what her job is she pulls grades on a daily basis. And any of our migrant students that have D's or F's, and she starts with seniors and works her way down, she was pulling them out of their stay skills class or a class that we can pull them for a while and works with them on whatever they're missing or their grades that are low. And this is the very first year that I've been doing the migrant program that I have not had a single high schooler have to go to summer school for credit recovery. So I would say that was a well-invested piece. Okay. Title II, I work with Paige on this one, and this is just to increase our student achievement. This is where our curriculum and PD tends to come out of. And Paige and I just work on those to take and make sure that we're working the best that we can to make sure our students are succeeding with those funds. There. Go ahead, please. Title III, this is the one I wish that the state would fund more. We currently have 127 identified English learners in our school district, K-12. 16 of those 127 met the state's exit criteria this year, and I had another 16 that were literally 0.3 away from meeting the exit criteria. So 33 previous and current EL students, something that came out of one of our PAC meetings with migrant, and I include the migrant and the EL, we do it together, and I was super excited. We had Oster from CWI come and present, and he talked to the parents about the club test. And so I worked with the high school and the academy, and this was the first year that the students had participated. And we had 33 students who went, and most of them, some of them I couldn't get feedback from, most of them received anywhere from 18 to 16 college credits by taking the Spanish club test. And I had a number of them with 16 credits when they walked away from that test. So that was a huge piece that they don't have to pay for those college credits now. So I was super excited about that.
That's cool.
So this is where Alicia was talking. Our preliminary allocations, originally I was a little excited because originally they were telling me it was going to be a 3% cut straight across the board. And then at the end of last week, they gave us some new numbers. So Alicia and I sat down and sent in just last Thursday for the state to look at and approve our Title I. So what's projected for the 24-25 school year is $382,651 in Title I funds. And Title I-C, $183,088. In Title II, $90,011. And in Title III, they're projecting $12,060. And now you can see why I say I wish Title III would, because those are ones.
Does Title III come under our classes that are like the extra kind of double as the college and the high school credits?
Not necessarily. That's just how our, one of the focuses our program took.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen, you go to other schools, they might not use the funds at all for those kind of things.
No, in our Title III, we have the focus. So at the elementary level, I work with them overseeing, as a certified ENL teacher, work with the paras on the best way to take and work with our students that come in as English learners. This year we had an anomaly and we were sitting a lot better than other school districts. We had 6 at the secondary level that were non-English speakers that came into our school district versus talking to Valley View, who had 243 non-English speakers that came in. So we were sitting a whole lot better.
Understood. It's funny.
That's my new graduation. Spanish.
Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you. Cindy,
Thank you
so
very much.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's move on to discussion item B. Which is you.
Yep, this is just a request for an out-of-state trip from our FCCLA. We had several students qualify for nationals, and that is it. The national competition is in Seattle. You have the information there in your packet regarding how many were going and all of those. But FCCLA is like our family consumer science coursework. So family consumer science, it's similar to FFA. It used to stand for Future Farmers of America, but they've just adopted an acronym as the name.
It wasn't FFA, was it?
Well,
FHA.
no,
FHA?
I'm saying FFA, the ag programs used to actually stand for Future Farmers of America, but
Right.
they've actually gotten rid of that as being the name, and it's just
Oh.
FFA.
Yeah.
And FCCLA is a similar thing where it used to
Future
stand for,
Homemakers.
well, and it was FHA, and then it was FCCLA, and so they've changed all those names around, but it is our students that are working in our culinary arts program that are heading over to that. So, any questions on that trip?
Have they found somebody? Because it basically states that we're going to provide an employee chaperone.
They do. I don't know who Stacy ended up. Stacy told me last week that it was either going to be someone that she had or she was going.
Oh, okay, because I
So-
noticed she signed in.
Yeah, Stacy is ultimately responsible for going if there's not another employee that's able to go.
Okay.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Let's move on to discussion item C, the handbook reviews.
And that'd be Lisa.
All right,
And so really for both these handbooks, there isn't a lot that has changed from last year to this year, because there wasn't a lot within policy or things like that that needed to change. Obviously with Mr. Kingston coming into the middle school, there were some slight changes in that handbook. Mill Creek, same administration, same expectations going into next year, so not a lot of changes with that one. I know a conversation that has been brought up as we've been reviewing it is how is the handbook delivered to parents? And so as we go through registration, it's delivered digitally. So then a suggestion would be to add those digital links to some of the documents it references. And so that's something we're going to go back and ask administration to do in those handbooks, as well as to make sure as it references some of our other handbooks or policies that they have links in there as well. So it's ease for parents as we deliver those during the registration process as well.
thank you.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard you, but I was trying to hear, will there be hard copies at
Always.
registration?
We can always print them and have them available, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, when we have, like our open house nights, or when we have, any time that somebody walks into the school, and registers or wants to register that way, we do have hard copies in
Okay.
the offices as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody? Thank you.
Definitely like hard copies.
I just think it's,
Let's move on to discussion item D. That would be you, Mr.
Yes.
Curick.
Correct. So we're talking the Greater Middleton Parks and Recreation Agreement for the
Rec Center.
rec center. Thank you. And what was put in the packet is the latest draft after their attorneys had a chance to review it. Most of these things are simply references to code that were added in and clarifying remarks. The substance of what we were asking for is the same. Essentially, 2-year agreement with a renewal of that 2-year agreement each year annually in our July meeting. And then with a 90-day, and we had talked 30, 60, and 90, but with a 90-day notice if we were to go away from this agreement because of some need that the district had to utilize that building. The Greater Middleton Parks and Rec Board are in favor of that agreement. We've put that agreement together in this contract. Any questions from you as a board on how we proceed? It's a pretty flexible document, gives us some opportunities to adjust, but it also allows them to be able to make plans by doing it this way. So they felt comfortable with it. Their board hasn't had a chance to look at the finalized document since their attorneys have looked at it, but that would be something where if you as a board approve this agreement, we would hand this over to them. Once their board has approved, then we'll get all the appropriate signatures. Any concerns or questions?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Nope, thank you for working on that.
you bet.
All right, let's move on to discussion item E.
And if I could just make a quick note, as a reminder, this was just about having any discussion you as a board wanted on the request made by the city for that section, to complete that section of road over by Heights.
I apologize, I wasn't at the last meeting, so did we discuss that at the last?
There wasn't a lot of discussion. There was a presentation by the city manager, not city
Okay.
manager, the city engineer. And the letter for the request was attached last month. That same letter is what was attached this month. They are making that request. This would just be a time for you as a board to have any discussions you would like about that request. If you went into the action item section of our meeting, you have the option of approving, denying, or if there's no motion, then it doesn't move forward either.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, I struggle with it, because, number one, we're doing our best to save as much money as we possibly can and use funding as carefully as we can. Number two, the totals they're looking for are equal to housing, buying a portable, and we've got to build a school.
Truth.
Number three, I just feel like it's an odd place to put the school in to pay for something, even a portion of something that it really wouldn't be, except that there's been some maybe not some great forethought in planning within the city. And so they're trying to mitigate traffic that has nothing to do with us. Our job is to educate anybody that comes into our district. We have to by constitution. The inconvenience of bus lanes and things like that, it stinks. It's not fun, and I'm sorry, but for us to take money from an educational standpoint and put it towards a road for convenience that is inconvenienced because of a plan that somebody else poorly thought out, I'm not in favor of it at all. And it's not because I don't love our town, because I absolutely do. I live very near this and I'm fully impacted by this. I just don't think it's a good fiscal use of our taxpayers' money to put towards this, something that we definitely need to be moving towards, or holding on to for an emergency situation and just regular operating costs from day to day.
It's not, the money's not there. It's just not there. Bottom line. Any other discussion?
I struggle as well, even though I don't live over there and deal with it, but it's kind of surprising to me that the city would come to the district for that. Because it's really,
You live in the city. Don't part of your taxes.
There's a benefit to the
I mean,
school
yeah,
by
pay
putting that
taxes.
road through.
No, you're right.
But
it's for parent drop off and pickup and
just
the buses.
use of moving through, but
Yeah, and then looking at this cost
I'd
estimate,
rather
it's
pay my
like,
teachers more with 100,000.
isn't clearing and grubbing and removal of obstructions and unsuitable material evacuation? Isn't that all kind of the same thing? So I shouldn't have just not said that, but, it just kind of, it's an estimate, so it could be a lot more than what they're asking, a third of this.
And they have, in the letter, they talk about what the bids came in at.
Yeah,
And so we'd be pretty close to what those bids came in. So what they're asking for would be towards that total cost, but that is
that's a
the,
lot of money, 192,000,
1/3 of that.
a third of the,
There goes our contingency fund.
That's,
It's gone.
yeah,
that's our 1/3 that they're asking.
yeah, of the 578.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with Jake.
Anything else?
Well, I just curious about the city's budget and, they collect a ton of fees from now on these developments. And I know on the new RV park, they collected $775,000 in fees from that one project. Like, I don't know how much money they got, I don't know where the other money's going, but it seems like they should be able to pay for this sort of thing. I mean,
Ouch.
yeah.
I mean, from my standpoint, it's not that I feel like we need to be, I feel belligerent about it. It's just that it's a lot of money and that's teacher salaries, that's fixing things in the schools.
Programs for kids.
It's just a lot, that's a big chunk of change out of pocket that we haven't budgeted for. And we just got through our budget hearing and it's just not, like, what do we cut from the budget to make up for this?
Well, I think if the city going forward, if they want a cooperation with something, they should break down financially where they're at, how much they're collecting on fees, or maybe they should have collected more on fees for some of these developments. But a lot of that is just kind of out of our wheelhouse,
You're correct.
Yeah.
You are correct. And there's taxes that should go to roads. We don't get to tax people like the city does. So unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a healthy.
Has anybody been in contact with you to kind of see where?
nope.
Anything else? We'll move on. Let's move on to discussion item F. RFP for the
Yes.
CTE.
So, what you see is I placed a copy of the RFP. This is just something that I'd like to ask that over the next few weeks, you take a look at. Primarily, if you move to page 3, where we start into the qualifications for experience and the rubric that we would be using. The way we would be looking at this one would be a little bit different than when we did the request for qualifications for the elementary school. It would be more just directed back towards the board. And anybody else the board would like to be as part, be part of that committee to make the decision. But this is a design build proposal, meaning that the firms come with a proposal of how they would take the funds, design the building, and then build the building. And so with a smaller project, this seems like a better formula for getting our project moving forward. One of the things that we're still waiting on, we need to have a soils report that we can provide with this so that the companies can utilize that in making their cost projections on what would need to happen. So we're working on getting that soils report completed. But between now and then, our attorneys will look at the RFP. As you have opportunities to look at it and provide any input, and then we would be hoping to have this approved in our July meeting with an immediate turnaround to being published after that July meeting. It's kind of a timeline we'd be looking at. So as you have a chance to look through those, the rubric there and what we'd be looking at trying to identify if there are additions or subtractions, if there are things that you know now you'd like me to make sure and include, we can share that now. If there are others throughout the month, reach out and we'll get them put together as well.
Perfect.
That's all I have. There's not anything else from the board.
I was gonna ask you for a timeline, but I found it.
Okay.
Anybody? Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's move on to G.
Okay.
We're gonna put in elementary school.
So, and just as a quick summary, what we're looking at with this is we do have 2 possible sites. And so as part of the process in preparation for the elementary school, we've asked our architect and construction firm, LKV and ESI, to kind of work up this comparison. So if I can just give the floor to
Please.
Amber, she'll walk us through, and then Anita Kyle is here from ESI to answer any questions that might be more directed towards them.
Perfect.
Just some hard copies for you.
Cindy will appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and
I'm
then
still
Amber.
a paper person.
Is there one you'd like to have up on the screen first?
Yeah, let's just start with that first site document.
And this, another quick note, this isn't for necessarily making a decision tonight, but this is first go at some of the information and the pros and cons for you to share, because there'll be opportunities for us to get input from folks around those sites to get feedback from them as well.
Well, good evening, thank you. I'm glad I made it, on the drive over here, they had a big bender on the interstate.
Yikes.
I swear, our traffic in the Treasure Valley is ridiculous.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Amber Van Oker, LKV Architects. So you've got 2 different documents, 3 different documents. You've got a kind of a summary page and then 2 site graphics. And what we've been working on over the last handful of weeks is just kind of doing a high level analysis of these 2 sites. And, we try to be extremely not putting any of our design thought actually into these 2 sites and just analyzing them as though we're comparing them more from a pros and cons perspective. And that's to give you the information that you would need in order to, as a board, make a decision on which direction we should head. A lot of our analysis has to do with, existing utilities to the site, the topography of the site, soils conditions, aspects that perhaps a developer is bringing to the table that the district would not then have to fund. So we've kind of tried to look at both these sites from that lens. The first one is the northern site that all of you are very familiar with. There's been a lot of, previous work done on this site. I'm calling it the Meadow Park site. In your previous bond elections, obviously, there's been a lot of design work already associated with the site, which is a great, springboard for us to start. And I think what I'd like to do, is there any way that you can zoom so the whole graphic is in there? Zoom it tight.
That a little bit better.
Yeah, that's great. And the graphic that you have, I actually have made some revisions to this before I had sent this to you,
Okay.
so, sorry, Mark. What we really try to do is analyze these sites as though we don't have a building footprint yet. I don't want everyone to get hung up on what the building looks like. So, we kind of take either a previous layout that my firm has done in the past, or we just really are really basic and say, okay, potentially we're gonna land a building somewhere in the center of the site.
And Amber, if I could say, so if we were doing a 70,000 square foot building, that's the kind of space, if it were a square,
Correct.
you could take.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's meant to be high level, so don't get hung up on, a shape of a building or access points. What we're really trying to do is just look at the piece of ground, analyze it, from the lens of what's already on site, what improvements would the district have to bring to that site? And all of this, you really need to be thinking about it more from an economical perspective also. Because developing a site, and Anita can follow up on this, bringing utilities and how we construct on that site is a huge percentage of what it means to build a building and the funds associated with that. So on this site, you've got some really good positive things that are happening. Obviously, it's almost a 15-acre site. You have existing public road access. There is this little stretch right here, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. That would have to be extended. It's not been improved to this point. So the district would be responsible for making those improvements. We do have some existing roadways that we would be aligning with for any entrance onto the site. There's utilities in Meadow Park Drive. One of the bigger problems is sewer service to this site. So there's actually two different connections. There's one here at this roadway, and then there's another one here on that northeastern corner. We've already been having some general, just high-level discussions with the city. They are not going to let us make this connection here. The sewer shed to the west of this site is already at full capacity, so the school would not be able to make that connection. The unfortunate part is that the sewer connection then on the northeastern side, it's a pressurized sewer system connection that we would have to make there, which means that we would have to have an on-site lift station on this property that would be, the city would then consider private, and that would have to be maintained by the district. So not only is there quite a bit of upfront cost associated with developing that, there's an ongoing maintenance issue associated with that.
That sounds expensive.
That stuff has to be
Yeah,
replaced all
it
the
is,
time.
and over time, it's expensive, because it's not, it's not a system that you can just build and forget about. It takes maintenance. So that's probably a negative, and in my graphic, you'll see that, I've got kind of a pros and cons summary, and it's definitely a con for this site. There's an existing drainage lateral that runs along that eastern side, and everybody's familiar that this site slopes dramatically from west to east. It actually drops about 20 feet, which from our perspective is also a con, just because developing a footprint of 70 to 75,000 square feet on a site that drops that much, you're either building up this entire site with fill to get everything on the same level, or you're designing a site plan that's tiered, which you've got a lot of, ramp systems that would have to happen on a site like that. Although I do feel if we were to go this route, that would probably be what we would initially investigate, is how could we tier this site so that we're not just hauling in, 15 acres of fill in order to get this thing leveled. So that's another negative for this site. There is water and power in Meadow Park, so that's good. We've got good connections there. In some of your previous work on this site, we do have water rights. So there are water rights, surface water rights available for this parcel. The problem is that the development of the subdivision to the north and the development of the subdivision to the east, when those subdivisions got developed, they removed the conveyance system, so the ditches associated with getting irrigation water to this site. So even though the site has water rights available, surface water rights, the district would then have to come up with a plan on how do we deliver the water to this site. There's two options. There's a existing connection point that's a further east, and then another one further north that we would be able to get water from, but we would have to obtain right of way through private properties in order to convey that water from those sources. It's not impossible. We haven't even really started to look at, what the economics around it would be,
Is that,
which we can do.
is that Black Canyon Irrigation District?
Yes.
Black Canyon, yeah.
What we would probably recommend would be to actually go through the process of getting those water rights transferred to a ground source system, which means you transfer your surface rights, it turns into a ground source system, and we go and drill a well. And that's just a process that we would have to go through in order to do that.
So the elevation change of 20 feet over, side to side there, and you're talking about like tiered, that also would impact the design that you guys ultimately come up with, because then you're talking possibly a 2-story, like a daylight, basically, coming out under something like that. Does that change costs drastically per square foot? Or if you're talking about something that's like a concrete basement type thing, would that be kind of just horse trading straight across?
Well, you bring up a wonderful point, and that's going to be the next piece that we look at on both these sites is, how do we address a single-story solution compared to a 2-story solution, just to give you all those options. I think a 2-story solution on this site would be fantastic. And I do think there would be some economic ways to save some money on that. You can just envision if we did have a 2-story solution and you had a daylit lower level and still a parking area or even a playground that you would be able to enter into that lower level. You're not dealing with an ADA concern at that point. It's a 2-story structure, so it would have an elevator in it. And then you're able to go up to your main floor, which would then also be able to develop this part of the site at that finished grade. And you're not just bringing in all of this, fill in order to get everything up to one level.
But economically, when you're looking at that, is it just kind of a swap because your development costs in general have gone up because of utility?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think that's something once we kind of do a little layout, ESI will kind of go through, a high level exercise on that. The one thing I think I would bring up is that the previous design by the previous design team, they were actually doing a very large retaining wall along this eastern property line, which was just another solution. If you want to get the entire site up to the same level, you're going to have a retaining wall somewhere in order to compensate for that. That would be a very expensive structure to have to develop. And there's a 100-foot easement associated with this drain. So this is just kind of an approximate line of where that 100-foot easement associated with this drainage ditch line. So you can't really do anything with that land. It's just there. I mean, you're able to use it, but you can't build on it. So that retaining wall structure would occur, west of that. So you are losing quite a bit of acreage in that sort of solution. And I do get a little concerned about the appearance of something like that. I mean, the previous design had that retaining wall at its highest point, it was 17 feet in height. So these homeowners here are basically staring, at a very large structure.
Can't see it
of
from my
sorts.
house.
But anyhow, those are all the things that I think, every site plan, you can turn a negative sometimes into a positive, and is that positive a two-story solution that really takes advantage of this nice slope?
That irrigation easement, that takes out a big chunk of land, 100 feet around that.
Yeah,
On just on the one side or 50 and 50?
it actually, so you can kind of see where their property boundaries are, and it actually does come on the other side of that a little bit, but it's not right down the
It's just
center.
mainly,
Yeah.
yeah, the drains, you usually have the 50-50, so it can be cleaned out
Right.
on either side.
And then we do have some of that is occurring actually east of that, but you'll notice that just where those property boundaries are, it's not an even.
Is that
split.
active? That
Yeah, it is
Okay.
active,
And-
and it
and-
actually,
we would not be able to draw from that? That's not what our.
no,
water rights
this
attached
this
to.
is actually just a drain.
Drain
Oh, gotcha.
from it.
Yeah, so it's receiving water from the north, so it's being piped underneath the roadway. And then this entire site is draining down into this.
Gotcha.
And we wouldn't be able to alter that. We would still have to make sure that the design allows that to happen.
You can irrigate from drain water, it's just not reliable.
Yeah.
Right. So let me see, I think that's about it that I wanted to, there was a geotechnical report that was completed back in 17. And it didn't have anything that jumped out at me that we would be concerned about. Groundwater was encountered in a couple of the test pits, and obviously it was closer to that drain, but I don't see that as a negative. There was a traffic study that was also completed in 17. That was at that point showing that all the public roadways leading to the site were operating at an appropriate level of service. Granted, time has passed, so that traffic study would have to have, kind of a refresh done to it. In the highway district number 4 is a lot better to work with than what we're used to in Boise with ACHD. So, they're a lot easier to deal with. I think we would be able to just do a refresh of that traffic study without having to start from the very beginning. But it all comes down to numbers for them, can the roads serve the site correctly, knowing that it's gonna be a school.
Overall, I think that the other side, the biggest advantage is you're taking all the traffic that would be here, right?
Yeah.
Where we don't need a lot more traffic and you're putting it.
Well, it's gonna shove a bunch of it up Cemetery right by Heights where we've got a problem
Right.
anyways.
You're doubling up all
So I
that
think
traffic.
just to
Yeah.
put everybody's perspective, the Meadow Park goes from, at the north, it hits Purple Sage, but on where that road is going out to the west, that's the one that goes to Cemetery. Going to the east, it hits Middleton Road, which is gonna take you right down past Mill Creek.
Yeah.
So it's hitting both of those arteries
Yeah, that's
coming in, so.
service us.
So are there any additional, I guess there is one design piece that I did want to point out. Potentially we're gonna be facing the design of the facility north, just because this is your main public access. So that does create a north-facing entrance, which any architect can't stand. It's just something that's very difficult to control in our climate. So I would throw that out, that that's kind of also a con from our perspective.
I see that as a huge disadvantage. I mean, it's so nice at the Heights where everything is facing south. You get all that summer or the winter sun the snow melt, everything is so much better when you're south facing.
Yeah, and I think, there'd be the ability to rotate it a little bit, and at least get some east facing exposure, but you wouldn't want to take that too far, so.
Yeah.
Lisa, can you go to the other one? So the Terramore subdivision, this is just north of Highway 44 and east of Kingsbury. So this has already gone through an approval with the city of Star. As far as this, it's part of a large subdivision development that has already obtained some of its initial approvals and is moving quickly through the process with the city of Star. So Highway 44 is, approximately down here. And this roadway winds around, and one of the main entrances into the subdivision is east of the school site.
It's about a quarter mile north of Highway 44.
Yeah, it's not even that much.
Not even a
Yeah.
quarter mile, yeah.
Well, this, and I should have brought an overall one. So this is another parcel of ground that's not part of the subdivision, and Highway 44 really is right here. This parcel is.
But you can actually, if you drive down there, that land that is right there, kind of stuck in by the parking area, that house is the first house you see from 44.
That great big old house.
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah.
brick
That's that
house,
one
yeah.
right there. And then the fire department, could you give an indication where the fire department is? The new
Jackson's
fire.
right there
Yeah,
across from the
yeah.
entrance at Talega.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's right there. Yeah. On the opposite side.
yeah, on the opposite side.
Not to sound overly excited about this site, but it comes with everything that, in my business, when I'm working with school districts, that we look for. Because a developer is showing up ahead of you and is basically taking care of virtually all of the infrastructure associated with developing this site.
Well, could you put a monetary value on something like that, just ballpark? it?
We'll just look at her pros and cons.
I mean,
It's like,
Versus seven
just
out
that
of eight.
development work.
millions,
yeah,
millions.
Even that section of road that we have to put in for the other sites, it's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Never mind admin, the bringing the utilities, the pump house, everything.
oh, yeah.
Yes, millions.
Yeah.
Cons.
So the developer has placed the school site in their phase one construction process. So they'll be doing all the infrastructure associated with getting utilities and road work to the school site. And then, their initial phase one section of residential lots. So they're basically bringing in everything. They're developing the roadways, they're bringing sewer and water and power here. And probably, part of that first phase will be work that they, some improvements that they have to do to Kingsbury. They've gone through,
That sewer would just be gravity.
yep, all we'd be doing, they'd be stubbing out to the school site and connecting to it.
Great.
They've already engaged a traffic engineer, and he's already gone through a full analysis of not only the subdivision, but the effects the school district and the development of the school would have on that traffic study, and we've been working with him. That's how come this one you'll see, we actually did place a footprint. We placed, just one of our elementary schools that we've done in the past, and kind of developed some access points for some parking, because he needed that in order to complete his traffic analysis. So, again, don't get hung up on that footprint. It was just to kind of show for his report, what potentially could be a site layout, and more associated with how vehicles are entering onto the site and busing. The good thing that came out of his analysis is that we're not looking at any new traffic signalization wouldn't be required. So no traffic signal here, no traffic signal there.
On our spot, not on the 44. That's
Yeah,
not what they're
44 is
talking about.
totally different. 44, where this connects, into 44, that is getting improved with a traffic signal. Where Kingsbury connects into 44 is getting improved with a traffic signal. But that's on the developer, that's not on the district.
But that's not until he's done with phase 3, which is 2030.
Yeah,
So it's just,
I think the main, I'd have to go back, I think the traffic study is actually since, like the initial entry into that subdivision, I think that's coming on phase 2 of this development, but I can confirm.
yeah, I read some, I live right there.
Right.
So I'm on Elaine, I'm down by the river on the opposite side.
Okay,
But Kingsbury's just one turn away from my road
yeah,
and stuff. So I know exactly where this is and stuff like that. But I remember getting something, because I'm technically I'm in the Starfire district, but I have a Middleton address. Yeah.
all of Starfire.
Well, no, that's not true.
No, it's middle.
But, yeah, so I get a lot of stuff on the Star side of it. And we got, and I thought there was one signal, but the other one was 2030
Yeah.
after phase 3.
yeah, the Kingsbury one isn't coming until later, but I think the main one is coming in their second.
Okay,
But
so
we can-
between Blessinger and Kingsbury.
Right,
is
we
where
can
it's gonna be.
confirm all of that.
44 will require.
The one thing
Like
that
20.
I don't believe has happened through their review process, so the traffic study goes off to the highway district, and ITD is most likely also involved in the review of that. They can put requirements on this developer for when all of that happens.
Right.
And they might say to him, hey, you've got to do these traffic improvements with phase 1 regardless.
Right.
And none of those decisions, I don't believe have been made unless they just happened in the last couple of weeks.
We looked at the way we've got districting per school moved around, like, right now, if we were to do this site, we're pulling a bunch of people down from Star and they're in one, like, we've got a kind of less than a
That's
mile
like-
radius. We've got 3 elementary schools that we're trying to pull people from
Right,
8
so.
miles away.
Well, while we haven't gone into specific numbers, because you have to look at the number of kids in all those different areas, generally what you would look at with the Meadow Park is you would be looking at pulling all of the north portions, shifting some of the southern portions of Heights over to Purple Sage. You'd be kind of shifting things around this way because what it's being placed north, not a lot north, and in between Heights and Mill Creek. So so what you would see from the eastern part of the school district down to Canada would still end up in Mill Creek, not in the new school because of where those,
Right.
where,
So we've got
Most
Purple
logical
Sages and
places
Anchor
would
out
be-
there. But then we've got this core cluster of 3 right in the middle of town, basically.
yeah, so if we did the Meadow Park one, that'd be, you kind of had cones coming into those 3. They'd be, come into a section there, but they'd open up into a larger cone. Where those lines would be, we haven't gone to. Looking at the Terramore, site, you would be pulling more almost from near Mill Creek east, going to that new elementary school, and then pulling some from the Heights into that Mill Creek and so on. But again, all of those, we haven't done the studies of where those lines would be.
Yeah, so right now, like, how long does it take a bus to get from your house to Mill Creek, which is where your kids would go?
5 minutes.
I was gonna say,
Three
even
miles.
from, yeah, it's not,
It's 3 miles.
it's, I bet I live farther away,
Yeah, no, like from where I live, yeah. It's like 3 miles.
because I'm the opposite end.
Right.
I'm Purple Sage.
Because right now we have 3 rectangles
Yeah.
going
10 minutes.
in the district.
Yeah. or-
Any of these others would change, I mean, either site would change it from those 3 rectangles to a shift of those either cones or whatever. You'd probably have a more, I guess, like geometric look if it were out at the Terramore, and then a conic look if you were at the.
You know, efficiency wise for kids, families, you know, kids traveling to and from school and stuff, I think that's a consideration. And if that load balance is a little bit better, I think that's an important consideration.
Well, if it'd be nice to have a map, we can map out how many square miles on that side of the district, because there's a number of, I mean, there's quite a few square miles, and just kind of be able to, you know, draw a quadrant. But it seems like it makes more sense to have one school that's more on the eastern side of the district.
I don't know what kind of land is open out there and being eyeballed for development, and, you know, in a lot of ways, we don't necessarily have control over that. So I mean, if that continues to get built and our solution is here, I mean, I feel like that's an important thing to look at as well.
Sure, because I mean, that's closer to Boise, the east side. I mean, that's logically, naturally, that's gonna be developed first or more.
Two additional, there's gonna be pressurized irrigation. Actually, I got some revised plans and they're gonna pretty much take a pressurized irrigation line around all 4 property lines. And that will be put in by the developer, part of a whole pressurized irrigation system for the entire subdivision. There will be, part of that will be a responsibility by the district to participate in, you know, the actual infrastructure cost associated with the pumping system, which is typical.
Yeah.
So they would figure that out on, you know, what your share of that pumping system, and then obviously there's ongoing maintenance associated with that pumping system. But we see that solution all over, and that would be pretty.
But it sounds like we would have a pumping solution that we would need either way, but this
Absolutely.
particular one would be more shared.
Correct, correct. And then the last piece I would point out is that this side is essentially flat. You've got about a 3-foot drop from west to east. So from a topography perspective, you know, we don't have any hangups there. We can pretty much do whatever we want to do.
Because it was farm ground.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a field,
Farm ground.
it's still a
Well,
field.
that's why it's flat.
So yeah, don't get too hung up on the layout of the site. You know, no matter what happens here, you would have entrances off of this roadway. We're trying to keep this entrance off of Kingsbury. That would just be more of a dedicated either bus loop or faculty access point. So that, you know, I think you would ultimately see a site plan that was real similar to this. The next thing that we are doing on both sides is looking at it from a perspective of what a 2-story solution would do. And what that would show you is, you know, on a smaller site like this, how much ground does it free up for exterior play areas? So that's kind of the next piece that we're working on over the next couple of weeks.
Does it hinder the site that much where it is smaller acreage compared to the other side? Are you still comfortable with it being enough room?
Yeah, I think it's enough room. The problem that we run into, you know, if you're gonna start having 700 students on this site, it's really difficult to maintain, you know, quality grass, you know, with that many kids running around. So we really do try to figure out our hardscape play areas, because honestly, the younger kids kind of gravitate towards those spaces. But that would be the negative, is that you really are limiting that exterior playground, just from a grass perspective. There's other things that we can bring up and talk about, you know, does a portion of it go into a synthetic turf solution, which is honestly something that we've been doing quite a bit with the Boise School District. They've weighed the pros and cons on how much money do they spend irrigating and maintaining a really poor condition of lawn? Or do we just take a portion of it and put it into a synthetic surface that the kids love, and maintenance kind of goes out the window for them?
I can make another point. That section in the left corner that is labeled office and commercial, the developer's representative has indicated that that's a space that's also possible to be donated to the school district as well. Just so that as you see the pictures, you know that that's something that if it were way to help something within the design. They've said that they're open to that. They just haven't confirmed anything there.
So that's not part of the 11.2 acres right now.
I'm gonna ask,
No,
yeah.
no. This piece is not.
Okay.
So yeah, your 11.2 acres are basically what you're seeing there.
But when you're talking millions of dollars in difference in infrastructure, it just seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, you just have to save the money.
It's a tough one to, it's just so much money to establish infrastructure for a site of this size. It's actually shocking what it would cost to run the public roads and utilities and establish all of that. So it's a huge benefit to the district for sure.
And if we saw that, like, for example, in Kingsbury, it was gonna put too much traffic strain on that intersection, could we go to the highway district or wherever and say, hey, we need a light there for the school? Is that plausible?
I think it's something they would probably entertain. It's in, traffic engineering is kind of an interesting, I don't know why people do it for a living, I can't imagine it myself, but the road really does need to have a level of service before even a highway district would consider putting a signalized intersection, because they can have negative effects also. But I think it's something to certainly, have a discussion about. They would require flashers, so you're gonna have pedestrian flashers that would also, be around the site, just from a pedestrian and moving students safely.
Interesting.
Did you have anything you wanted?
No, I agree with everything that I.
Oh, wow.
Just wanted folks work with, she's doing a good job, but truly, if there's any questions for us, I'm an estimator by trade, so I look at the dollars and cents where at least Amber's taken care of the visuals of the building and everything else. But for me personally, this one is very, very much more cost effective. But I'm also not living in the neighborhood. I'm just looking at the dollars and cents.
And that's something that I wanted to bring up with you as a board, is that we are working through ways that we can reach out to the neighbors within those areas to get their feedback in a way that we can.
She's gonna
Mike's gonna go door to door.
Well, and I mean,
Mike lives.
I say go door to door, but I mean, it's as much just making sure that everyone in those areas knows where we're gonna be to be able to give feedback if they can't attend one of these open meetings, to be able to bring that to us in a different way. Making sure that there are hard copy mailers going to those specific addresses, those kind of things. So we're working through a plan to be able to do that for both this site and the Meadow Park site, to get that feedback from those neighbors.
So how does it work? We're still in Canyon County, but yet Star is part of, we're in part of
That's
Star.
the land
Yeah.
that they had a vote over who got.
Yeah, but as far as the school district is concerned, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter what.
Nope.
Our line
we-
still goes to Canada.
We go to Canada and to the freeway and a little bit over there.
Yeah.
And so the only difference is, if we were utilizing this site as the architect and the builders were working, anything that they had to do, they might be going to Star instead of Canyon County or, Middleton to do it, as opposed to the Meadow Park, which would all be with Middleton City. So, but essentially, maybe from your perspective, it doesn't change how you operate, whether you're operating with a city, a county, or otherwise.
Your districts throughout the state of Idaho are multi-jurisdictional school districts, almost all of them are. West Ada lands in 5 different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So, that's just part of our process. We would be dealing with the city of Star on this particular piece of ground. The unfortunate part for any board where you're crossing jurisdictional lines is that you've got a development that's already gone through a preliminary plat approval with the city of Star. So this development is coming. And the students in this development are part of the Middleton School District.
Yep.
So
Just to add, one thing we didn't talk about was the duration as well. So the duration on the upfront to get these approved could be different. But the construction timeframe on the other school, we'll have to look at that tighter with the amount of utilities or work.
Mhm.
Oh, sure.
Paving dirt, there could be some months in there as well, so.
It just seems like it would be a lot of months to do all that excavating and all the utility improvements and stuff. That definitely changes the timeframe.
Mhm. But I don't have anything else.
No, anybody else? Thank you so much.
Yeah,
You bet.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the last one, discussion item 8.
If I can hand this over to Lisa, I'll just give a quick rundown. We started negotiations in about early May. Went through some the first several meetings, we're just talking class size discussions, how we were going to address keeping class sizes at a reasonable level. We were working through a lot of the wording. As we got to the end of May, we started working towards compensation. What we ended up in general, and Lisa will go over some of the details as we roll through this. But we are, in our negotiations, we offer to pay for the increase of insurance for our employees. We offer to honor their steps and lanes, so moving down the step on the salary grid, moving over if they qualify to move over, and then adding a 1% increase across all of those cells. And so folks that were making a step or a column change would see a greater increase than the folks that are maybe at the bottom of any of those columns. That was one of the reasons for the 1%, to make sure that there was still something there. We adjusted to meet that. Some of those were with some of the positions that we absorbed, helped us meet those cost needs, as well as adjusting how we were paying for professional development, teacher voluntary professional development. We had worked in something where the teachers were getting $30 per month to help towards those professional development and credit costs. Instead, we moved that into the salary grid to help pay for that 1% and maintained a method for teachers to get reimbursed for credits. So they still, if they earn credits, we will still pay them up to $300 per year. Previous to this, they had just been receiving those $30, and if they used it towards that or dues or other fees, it was up to them. But now it's part of their salary. That helped us pay for it. But it also still gives them the opportunity to get reimbursed directly for credits that they're taking towards their education, up to $300. Those are the main points that we were looking at. As you look across the state, we gave last year, there was a large influx of money from the state towards teacher salaries. A lot of districts chose to hold portions of that back and just give a certain portion of those dollars last year. Last year, when we did that, we gave all of those dollars to the teachers. And so this year, you'll see some districts that are giving 3% and 4% increases. Those were districts in large part that held some of those funds back last year. So we're just at the point this year where we're getting that. And as you've seen, and we discussed, there are several districts that are having to do major cuts and major things. So we find ourselves about in the middle of the range in terms of what we're offering compared to other districts. But we still remain competitive in one of the top districts pay-wise in the SIC. But if I can have Lisa go through, didn't mean to say rapidly, but as you move
I think we
through.
say to wrap it up.
No, wrap it up, just get it done. No, but she'll go through some of those primary, any of the more significant wording changes.
And I am just gonna skip over the small things as far as date changes and things like that, but, if you guys look at page 6, There was just some language change here. There wasn't specific language that talked about what we did for stipends when a staff member works part-time or works a percentage of their contract instead of full-time. And so we just needed to clean up some language. And so this is agreed upon language as far as how we're going to approach that, which would be the same as we do insurance, which is prorated into the portion of their FTE or their full-time equivalent amount. Scrolling down, obviously the salary scales will change to the updated 1%, like Mr. Gee just spoke about. On the bottom of page 7, there was just some language cleanup we needed to do with the experience stipend to make sure that a person needed to be in that cell for 2 years. So 1 year fully, and then they would get the stipend in the second year. So we needed to make sure that was clear. So then as they moved into it, they didn't receive the movement plus the stipend in the same year. And then a few more points. If we
Oh,
scroll.
right there, you want to talk
Thank you.
the,
Yeah.
what we added there?
The extracurricular compensation, we made some adjustments and tried to make this more clear. We also, there were a few that were no longer applicable, and then we added, so orchestra, we made sure we reinstated that stipend. Debate, library advisor, there were a few in there that there were stipends on the books, but they weren't necessarily part of the scale. And so we made sure that we had everything added on there as well. And then choir, there was a request to change that. It was specific to FX show choir. We just wanted to make sure it said choir assistant, which gives our staff the flexibility in what they're doing. If they need a pianist, they can get a pianist. If they need somebody to help with shows, then it gives some flexibility there. Leadership stipend, we did change. There was a request to make sure that it was specific where we held or stored, I should say, where we store the leadership roles, the amount we pay, and their job descriptions. And so we added some language there as far as what we're going to agree to do, where we'll store it, and when we'll update it. Questions so far? If you notice on page 13, kind of the middle, we did need to define retirement under our retirement notice, that they will initiate the process with Percy, because there was just, if you left our district, but you didn't necessarily retire, there was confusion as far as if the benefit would still go to you since you're leaving Middleton and not returning to Middleton. So we wanted to make sure we just cleared up the retirement language in the agreement there as well. And then we're gonna scroll here for a little bit before there's much change. The next specific change that we made does go to that professional development. We were calling it a stipend. We're gonna change that to a reimbursement. And it's down here on, and I said we're gonna scroll for a while, page 23. So we're changing that to say reimbursement. And we're going back to 2 years ago where we did offer the $300 per year as a reimbursement to staff. They need to turn in credits and show that they completed those courses, but then they are eligible to receive that. And so we just went back to that language and made sure that we clean that up as we move forward there. And then I would say the bulk of our time within this language piece was spent as we scroll down to starting on page 29 and moving to page 30 around class size and caseload. There was a lot of discussion around adding in the caseload numbers for special education and making sure that we had language in there as far as how we're gonna address it if we know that a class size or a caseload is getting close to those numbers. So a more proactive approach rather than reactive approach. And so we added language saying that if it's within 2 of that overload number, that we'll start some problem solving methods then and start looking at solutions prior to hitting that number. And that we'll, as far as the district goes, we're gonna watch those numbers. And so when they hit the number, we'll start that process. So it just is more proactive and not waiting for a staff member to react to an overload situation. And then adding these classroom type overload number of students. So our extended resource, preschool, and speech language, making sure we agree upon numbers there as far as an appropriate caseload. And if we're getting, and these would be the overload. So if we're getting within 2 of that, so 12 at the extended resource or 27 at the resource, that we would start those conversations then to make sure we put supports in place.
And I think it's important to note that when we talk caseloads, that's not necessarily the number of students that they have at the same time.
Right.
These special education, when you're talking a special education caseload, that's the number of students that teacher is responsible for maintaining the IEP, maintaining the instructional plans for, and so when you see, sometimes people might look at it and say the resource room, you're putting 29 resource students all in the same place at the same time, and that's just not the case. You don't have that many at the same time. But the teacher is responsible for those, and that these are overload numbers. I mean, this is the high end of where it should be before, when we start taking these other actions. It's not where we're trying to maintain them at.
Was, I just lost her name. Whitney, part of,
She was.
okay.
She was. And we had several special education teachers that came and testified during that portion of the meetings as well.
And I think it's important to know we reached out to many districts around us to see what caseloads were going on there too.
So I can't see over there, but it says 29 for resource and you said 27.
So in the language, we said if any class or caseload is found to be within two of that overload number. So at 27, we're gonna start problem solving before it gets to that
Oh, okay.
29.
So
Yeah.
within
Yeah,
two.
within
So
two, and that's
where
the whole,
27 came from.
that's the whole table, not just the special ed.
Okay.
And so that was the new language we added this year.
So. Sorry, I just wanted to say, this was just agreed upon this morning. What typically happens is the association then takes that, ratifies that, and then we bring that to the board. It doesn't have to happen that way, that's just typically how it goes. With this being our regular meeting for the month and recognizing that it may be a challenge to get everybody together before, we felt that we should present this to you as a board for your ratification, with the understanding that this would only be ratified. This only goes into effect if the MEA, the Teachers Association, also ratifies. They'll be taking that to a vote on Wednesday morning. But if they ratify and you chose to ratify tonight, and then they ratified, we're all good. If you ratified and then they chose not to, we're just gonna have to come back to you again with any other modifications that we were to make. And so if that's something that you as a board feel comfortable moving forward with this negotiated agreement, which I'll tell you that both the negotiating team and the district feels is a fair approach. That would be just something that needs to be kept in mind as we make the motion.
So that's why we didn't get this till this morning.
Yeah, because we only got it, we only finalized.
We had an
this
8
morning.
AM meeting this morning. So,
Yeah, it wasn't there on.
No, it
no,
wasn't.
it wasn't gonna
Friday.
be, yeah,
Yeah, we just got that done this morning.
so.
Okay, so I just have a question on the part on page 10 with the SLP, OTPT and
Yes.
psychologists. Is that now they're becoming an employee of the district, or are we still billing?
If they are hired by the district, that is the scale that we use to pay them. If they're not hired by the district, then we contract with them.
So how many do we have hired by the district? Because on accounts payable, there's quite a few companies that we're paying money to.
Correct. That is correct. Do you have the number?
For SLPs.
So for Sykes, we
Sykes.
had 3 this year. One of them was contracted, 2 were employed by us.
So we have 2 sites.
2 sites
That were
employed,
employed by us.
Right.
one that is contracted.
SLPs, one contracted, one employed, one contracted, so 1 of each. And so really, it just depends, honestly, as we're searching, where we can find candidates and which way it works better to be able to keep them employed.
So before you contract with somebody, do you put out an opening
Every time.
and try to find an employee?
every time.
Yes.
We go contracted when we can't find somebody to meet, to.
Because you have to
fill
provide
that
the
position,
service,
and
right?
we still
Yeah.
have to provide the service.
Right. Yeah, that's
And
where
which is-
you get,
Which is why the salary schedule for those positions are so much higher than the rest. In order for us to be competitive with surrounding districts, this is what we have to be able to pay for those particular positions. And even with that pay being higher, it doesn't match what a lot of them can make in the private sector. And so the supply is very thin.
so how many, do we employ any OTs or PTs?
Do you remember the OT numbers?
I think we have one OT. I know we have a total of 4 that fall on the salary schedule. I think the last one is an OT.
And then the rest of those would be contracted.
So 2 psychs, 1 SLP, 1
One
OT.
Yeah.
Where's the 4th one?
No,
That's
there's
it.
4 on that
That's
scale. So 2 psychs, 1 SLP, and 1 OT.
Oh, that is 4.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I would just reiterate it. Yes, there is a good mutual agreement there. So if we can get the ball rolling down the court, let's do it.
Do you feel like they're pretty satisfied with this?
I do, but there was one ratification vote that they took that didn't ratify within this process. So, I mean, I anticipate, I feel confident and hopeful, but we just won't know for sure until Wednesday.
Do we always start the negotiations in May? Is there a way to
As soon as-
start them?
The legislature's done, we usually do.
But I mean, to kind of get the
We could be
base.
more efficient, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
It just seems like
I
you
feel like
wanna
you
be-
tried in April. We
Yeah.
tried.
We would
I'm
prefer.
not saying you're not.
No, I know.
No, I feel
We
like
would
you
prefer
tried.
being done before school's out. We prefer the teachers leaving with an understanding of what they're coming back to. The timing just didn't work this time.
So basically, none of them have signed their contracts?
Correct.
Okay. Which
Correct.
is.
Which is
good
another
for
reason
you
we
guys.
We wanna
which
get
is
it
another
done,
reason we wanted to
yes.
get it done tonight so that if they ratify, we can start working on contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Just a conditional ratification.
Yep. And I
With the
think
caveat, yes.
we've got a
Jake
wording
has-
on that.
Jake has been handed the deed. So,
Oh,
anything else? You good? We're good? Let's move on to action items. All right, action item A, I would entertain a motion.
sorry.
Nope, you're okay.
I move to approve the SCCLA national trip to Seattle, Washington.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Action item B, I'd entertain a motion for the middle school handbook.
I move that we approve, I'm in the wrong spot, the middle school handbook.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain a motion for the Mill Creek Elementary handbook.
I move that we approve the Mill Creek Elementary Handbook.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I would entertain a motion for the Middleton Parks and Recreation Agreement.
I move that we approve, after they approve,
Yeah,
We're
we just
approving.
approve our side and then
Just
they'll-
our
approve.
side of the Greater Middleton Parks and Recreation Agreement.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Action item E, I would entertain a motion for the Middleton City Road proposal. Since there's,
So the proposal would be if we agreed
Or
to
not.
pay
Yeah.
or not.
You have, as a board, you have the right to make a motion to approve, to
or no
deny,
motion.
or no motion.
Oh, okay.
Just a motion.
Okay, there's no motion, so that dies. Let's move on to action item F. I would entertain a motion for the negotiated agreement with teachers.
I move that we accept the negotiated agreement for the 2024-2025 school year as previously discussed. This action would only be enforced if the Teachers Association also ratifies the agreement.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
That's it.
I would, and nope. We have one more action item. Who wants to, I would entertain a motion for number
move-
9.
I move that we go into executive session as per section 74, 206(1)B, Idaho Code to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent.
Second that.
Thank you. Will you,
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Dempsey,
Yep.
trustee Wagner,
yes,
trustee Powell,
Yes.
trustee Clark.
Yes.
thank you. Thanks for coming, everybody.